Today on Mondays with Mo, I'd like to welcome you to a brand new show, which is no longer called Mondays with Mo, but simply The Tony Mo Show. I know, right? Super original. Listen, everyone's got a show named after them at this point. Norm Macdonald literally has the show on Netflix called Norm Macdonald Has a Show, so I can have my damn Tony Mo Show. The Tony Mo Show is going to happen every single week. I'm not entirely sure on a day yet, but I'm thinking Monday works just as well as any other day of the week, and it is essentially going to become my dumping ground for everything I have to say about the wide world of video games, the industry around it, and who knows what else might get added to the fray. I think dumping ground, though, is probably not the best tagline. Think of it as a place where I invite you in to sit down for tea and scones, and we've got the widest selection of jams known to mankind. Those jams, of course, are the many discussions we're going to have here on each and every episode of The Tony Mo Show. That's a hot damn good food analogy. I like that. You can take that and use that. I'm gonna use that again. That was great. Everybody knows scones are better than crumpets or biscuits, by the way, because you can put tasty jams on them. So, on today's episode of the show, our first episode, we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things. We're going to be talking about cable management. We're going to be talking about NVIDIA's recently released RTX cards. We're going to be talking about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is, of course, Respawn's upcoming Star Wars project. And then we're going to be wrapping the show up like we're going to do each and every episode with some genuinely tasty food for thought. Leave you guys thinking as you walk away from the show each and every week. Now, I'm really excited about this project. It is something I have literally been putting off and stressing about for over a year. I actually was going to do this show a year ago. It was before last Christmas, and I just was like, man, I don't know. You just get down on yourself. YouTube makes it difficult to do content like this, and you stress about it, and then you don't finish it. So enough of that shenanigans. It's time to make this show happen each and every week, and I'm going to experiment with different editing techniques and having fun along the way. So while this episode's kind of plain Jane, let's just get kind of comfortable with one another. Get comfortable with my beard. I can see some of you out there probably have beards. I'm getting comfortable with your beards right now. They're glorious. And even if you don't have a beard, your clean-shaven face, it is beautiful as well. So yeah, it's going to change over time. It's going to be my little pet project. We're going to experiment with it. But you can always expect great video game and industry-related discussion here. There's no doubt about that. Speaking of, I recently upgraded my setup. I got a brand new Predator X34P ultra-wide monitor. And man, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. But what I realized before the monitor came in, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I think we've all been in this scenario. You'll all be able to relate 100%. And, I'm getting off really late doing some work, and I kind of look under my desk for the first time in about 6 months, and I realize the horrors. It's just cable management. There was none. There used to be, but there had suddenly become none. So I went to bed having nightmares about this. I could just see myself floating in space, tangled in a web of cables. It was like I was fighting a giant tentacle monster. Not the good kind, the kind that kills you. I don't know where I was going with that. So I woke up at like 5 o'clock in the morning in my underwear and decided I was going to cable manage my entire desk after I decided I needed to clean the entire house, which I did actually. It was a weekend for cleaning, but cable management came into play, and the cables were down beautiful so I could set up the new monitor, and it made everything better. Moved my PC onto the floor there. It was, sometimes just cable management. It happens, right? So tell me your cable management horror stories. They're probably far worse than just managing a small amount of cables in your underwear. I can only imagine what some of you IT guys have seen. Feel free to share those horrors down in the comment section below. If there's one thing we all have in common, it's cable management and its potential horrors. Let's talk RTX, because this actually leads into my upgrade to my ultra wide. So I was pretty much this last 3 months of the year thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to get a new GPU or high-end GPU, and I'm going to go ultra wide. What order do I want to do that in? I've got a 1070 right now. It does power the ultra wide for most games at like 90, if I'm down to medium, which is fine. But I was like, maybe I'll do GPU first. And of course, RTX gets announced, and I'm like, okay, let's see where this goes. And then it's just like a disaster, because I'm not going to spend $1,300 on a 2080 Ti, which is really the only card worth a damn, even though it's still incredibly expensive. And I'm definitely not going to buy a 2080 because I could just buy a 1080 Ti. So that was the point where I'm like, I'll get the ultra wide and I'll buy a 1080 Ti this holiday, and it'll be like $500-$600, and I'll save a bunch of money and get an insanely powerful card. So that's like the culmination, I think, of everybody's perspective on RTX is like, yes, 2080 Ti, very powerful card, very expensive. with a lot of power limitations coming from NVIDIA. 2080, not worth a damn. I mean, it's an $800 card that runs as good as, or worse in some cases, than a 1080 Ti. Obviously, the 1080 Ti has been on the market. Pascal's been on the market. It's got more optimization. So, yeah, we could say that 2080 will be more powerful in the future. But the reality is, at launch right now, it is not worth your money. And I almost was like, I'll do the 2080. In fact, I pre-ordered one and was just like, I'll pre-order on Amazon, get the Zotac card, and I can cancel it if the benchmarks suck, and they sucked, so I canceled it. But like, so here's the thing I don't get. I mean, it just seems like that side of the industry is always chasing new tech rather than ever optimizing on a single piece of tech, like Vulkan, for example. It's taken NVIDIA like how long to start really like even thinking about Vulkan, and they did increase their Vulkan support with the 2080 cards, actually. So I know Jace2 sent it a test and did Doom, and it ran pretty great. Because Vulkan tech's insane to me, and I know it requires a boatload of optimization from the devs on the front of the game, but I played Doom on my old, was it my RX 280 or whatever the hell it was? It's just like a 6 gigabyte card. And when Vulkan support came for out, I gained like 60 frames or something. I went from not being able to run the game at 60 FPS on Ultra and Nightmare to being able to run the game at like 80 FPS on Ultra and Nightmare. I mean, Vulkan's just nutso. And new tech like comes around, right, and it doesn't get adopted. And I think the reality here for the games industry side of it is they just got too much shit going on. You know, you got devs working with all these different tool sets, and the last thing they're worried about is like trying to optimize some insane bespoke piece of tech. And every dev I've seen talk about the Turing tech and you know, tracing's like, yeah, this is just another thing where it's this huge cost to like train people, to get people, you know, to start developing on it. Like, I doubt the real-time ray tracing thing, even in the next 2 years, and Turing as a whole, will ever become even 20% of the mainstream, you know, stuff. And I know we have games already looking to support it. Rise of Tomb Raider, you know, Metro Exodus coming up. But, I mean, it's an expensive piece of tech in terms of, like, the performance cost. Again, it's just like, it's cool. I get it, you know, and I respect the engineers at NVIDIA who want to do cool real-time stuff like this, because the idea of real-time ray tracing, you know, if it could just instantly be made available to everyone and just work, is obviously incredible. You know, it does, if it was adopted, if it could be adopted very quickly, if it was easier for people to just use it, then yeah, it's a huge workload of like, we don't have to manually do all this stuff and, you know, make our reflections. We can just do it in real time with this lighting tech. But it's just not that simple, right? And that's how NVIDIA came out in their keynote and made it sound like, hey, look, we got everybody's gonna be able to use this. It's gonna be amazing now. This is so much better than there ever was before. Look at everything else is shit now because we've got real-time lighting with ray tracing, and it's just like, it's just not that simple, right? Never is. So it just didn't work out, I think, the way they wanted it to work out, and I just think the launch has been a pretty big disaster, specifically for that 2080 card. I mean, it's an $800 card that runs the same as a card that you're going to be able to get for $600 or $700. And we're talking custom cards, you know, from the third-party people. We're not talking like, oh, you get a Founders Edition 1080 Ti for the, you know, for $200 less than the Founders Edition 2080. No, you get a beefed-up card, potentially overclocked and with liquid cooling on it even, for the same price as that 2080. So, yeah, this is just, yeah. Sorry, NVIDIA. That just didn't go the way I think you planned for it to go. The only thing I think any of us down in the average side of things are going to get out of the RTX cards is that the 1080 Ti is probably going to, you know, get a little price drop over the next few months if we're lucky. If not, you're just going to be able to pick one up $600, $700. I know I've already been looking at like EVGA's S2. So I'll probably pick one of those up. So, you know, that's, I guess, the bonus side of it is that those prices have finally normalized. I won't even say they're going to drop. They've normalized. But now NVIDIA is over here at a war with themselves. They're literally competing with their last generation card, which I think is strange and funny and fortunate for us. But also we get to see a lot of cool people like Kingpin overclock the RTX 2080 cards, which is fun. The TI, of course. So that's what we'll get out of it, is average end users who aren't going to spend $1,300 on a GPU. Let's move on. Let's talk Respawn's Star Wars project, guys. We do know, of course, it is called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I still love just to mention the way that this game was revealed, because it was like Vincent Zampella and a bunch of people. Garza was there, a bunch of people from Respawn in the audience at the EA thing, and they just like, actually, we've got one more thing from Vincent Zampella over here. Let's go down into the audience and see what Vince has to say today, folks. How you doing, Vince? Is there something you'd like to tell us? And they walk down over there, and Vince is sitting in the audience, and he's like, gee, Tony, it turns out there is. We're the developers over at Respawn. You may know us from our incredibly wonderful and extremely underappreciated Titanfall franchise. And we're working on a new game called Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's a game about Jedis and some Fallen Orders. We actually know quite a bit more about it, but not really that much more. What we do know is that it takes place between Episode 3 and Episode 4. It is set during the dark times for the Jedi as they're currently being hunted. Again, I will just never not laugh at the whole, just super off the cuff. EA's like, Vince, tell us what's you're working on. And he's like, Star Wars, and that was it. EA's really bad at showing their own developers support, all the time, which is why BioWare's very small window at E3 was a kick in the face. I keep saying EA at E3. The same thing with that announcement. It was just what are you doing to your dev teams? Why do you do things this way? Marketing at EA, get your shit together. No, make FIFA and Madden a separate thing. It's a different audience, a different crowd. Put it in its own show. We don't need to watch a 19-year-old kid just talk about FIFA on stage for 45 minutes while you just absolutely turn Command & Conquer into a mobile piece of shit. I'm still salty about that. Can you tell? I'm brooding over it still. Let's move on. Let's talk more Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. So when Respawn showed up at E3 this past year, they were wearing red and black Star Wars shirts. Now we can run with that pretty much any way we want. We could say, hey, maybe this is a game where you play as the Sith, you play as the bad guys, and you hunt down the Jedi. I mean, that would be a really cool perspective. Perhaps that's just the bigger focus of the game, is the fact that you are being hunted by the Sith and you have to survive as a Jedi. The other side of the coin I kept thinking about was, what if you got to play from both sides of the spectrum? What if it was a campaign that let you choose light or dark and experience two different stories that probably had a similar ending? As we know, if they're going with canon, the Jedi do kind of disappear, but they end up winning in the end, essentially, right? So I think that would be really cool. I think the bigger thing, obviously, though, we have to talk about, and all of you are like, Tony, what about multiplayer? This is, of course, multiplayer. So if you contract a team, if you go to a team like Respawn and say, hey, we want you to work on a Star Wars project, I have a hard time believing that Star Wars project isn't going to have some form of multiplayer. I mean, it's Respawn, right? That's not to say that they're not a talented studio and they can't do great single-player games, because Titanfall 2's campaign was incredibly well done, but that they're also known for that multiplayer harness. And let's keep in mind that EA is pretty much, like every publisher, set with the idea of games as a service. They want to release things that they can keep making money off of and that their developers can keep pushing content into well after release. This, of course, we've talked about game servers and services in the past. It can go good, it can go bad. It all really depends on how the publisher lets the dev handle it and how many resources the dev gets to do things the way that they should be done, not just the way that will maybe make money, according to some big wigs who probably don't play that many games themselves. So yeah, I think there will be multiplayer. What are we going to get from that, though? I think back to Jedi Knight Academy and stuff like that, crazy third-person lightsaber battles and first-person gunplay. Yeah, that would be really cool. And I think Respawn's, their skill set when it comes to movement-focused shooters, just how incredibly beautiful Titanfall 2 flows as an experience, would be phenomenal for that sort of game. I mean, come on, they're the team where I would absolutely go to them if I'm I want a game where, the Jedi can run off walls and do crazy aerobatics, and I want a game where the first-person gunplay feels good, so individuals using firearms who maybe aren't Jedi, if there's a system like that, can actually shoot these guys and be able to interact with them in a skillful way that doesn't feel clunky. I would go to Respawn. I'd be like, hey, you guys know all about movement-focused shooters at the highest level, let's be honest. There's really no other game that plays quite like theirs. You can even talk Tribes and stuff like that, but Respawn's just, I think, on another level with how snappy and just responsive Titanfall 2 is in the department of movement-focused gameplay. So yeah, I'd go to them and I'd say, this is what we want to do, and we want you guys to see what you can do with it. So I'm super stoked on that game for about a dozen reasons. Number one, it's Respawn, and I love the fact that they get to work on a Star Wars project. Number two, the potential for multiplayer like Jedi Academy, and I think if I had to pick a top three here, seems the route we're going with this, even though I said it doesn't, the fact that it's newish Star Wars. Everything Star Wars over the last 5 years has been just riding on the license really hard, like Battlefront. I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked some of Battlefront, but I think it's mostly eye and ear candy. It doesn't have any personal essence. It just feels like Star Wars doing Battlefield. I mean, that's all it is to me. There's very little in terms of the PvE components that feel special, that feel significant. It's not to say it's not there. I just think it needed to do something bigger and better in the PvE realm and just in the sandbox realm to really impress me, to really make me say this is a new Battlefront game, not just this is Battlefront if it was a Battlefield game. Because that's always how it's felt to me, regardless of me saying I liked the game or I didn't like the game. That's just how it feels to me. I mean, that's my personal opinion. So there really just hasn't been anything where it's been like, this is a Star Wars thing that can stand out on its own. I mean, the last thing I can think of is going like way the hell back to KOTOR and to Jedi Academy. We could say, The Force Unleashed was probably the last thing in like more recent memory that was really kind of its own deal. And that was great. I loved the first game. Second game was all right. So I hope that this is that. I hope this is Respawn getting to do their own Star Wars thing. And if it happens to release around the same time the film does, and we have like a game that isn't just trying to ride the franchise, that gets that exposure, then I think that would be incredible and extremely well deserved for Respawn as a studio. So let me know your thoughts. I really just wanted to, it's pure speculation from all of us at this point, outside of the point in time at which the game takes place. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What do you want from this game? What would you like to see from this game? What do you think is going to happen with this game? Let me know your thoughts. Let's go ahead and bite down on a tasty sandwich with today's food for thought. And this kind of ties back into the industry discussion we've been having throughout this entire episode, which is, are publishers prepared to meet the demand for producing cosmetic DLC that they are very quickly creating? This is something that I think we have a few really strong examples of. Number one, we look at Fortnite. Fortnite is a game that is obviously free to play, but that has very readily met the demand for cosmetic DLC. They've seen that as a free to play title, people don't really stress too much over unlocking stuff for free in game, even though you can kind of do that. But people are okay with purchasing stuff. So they release a new set of cosmetics pretty much every single month along with their seasonal stuff. And they always have content ready for people to produce. So as a free-to-play title, they're monetized, they're making a profit, they are 100% A-okay. They're so good that Epic was making so much money that they increased the split on Unreal Engine for their devs to like 90-10 or whatever. Tim Sweeney was basically like, there's no reason for us not to. We're making so much fucking money. It's insane. Please take it, developers. It was really that kind of a situation. I think on the other side of the coin, when we talk about also like multiplayer experiences, we look at Overwatch, which I think personally is struggling. Overwatch is a buy-to-play game, which then allows you to acquire loot boxes in-game, at least in some countries, as it's getting slowly banned in a lot of places, or to buy them with real-world money. Now, the problem Overwatch seems to be having is that when these new events come around, they're repeating a lot of skins. You're getting skins that were in the previous event the year before with different colors. The events themselves aren't that unique anymore. This is a game that is trying to function as games as a service that I don't think has enough resources getting thrown at it. I don't think the publishers, I don't think that side of Blizzard was ready to meet the demand for the fact that this game is alive 3-4 years on now. And we need to start producing really unique DLC. Otherwise, we're going to see a loss in profit margins for a game that doesn't really get bought anymore. A lot of people own it. So our profit now comes, considering we don't charge for DLC for maps or for characters, our profit comes from those cosmetics. We need to be making more unique cosmetics, more exciting cosmetics, so we are making money. That's the place they found themselves stuck in. And I think one of the answers that I would see for them is to scrap the loot boxes because they don't make as much money anymore as they probably did at the start of the game's life cycle. And I think in general, they don't make as much money as people think they do. They're manipulative, and they're riding on the manipulation of individuals who just get caught up in that kind of shit. But if they came out and every single season had a handful of skins that got thrown into a new progression system if they did it, and then like 3 or 4 skins for each event that were paid, $5 skins, $10 skins, depending on their rarity, whatever, those devs could make 3 really exciting skins rather than having 6 or 7 with only one of them being exciting and all of them being locked behind a paywall of a loot box, whether it's in-game or premium. So that's kind of, I think, what needs to happen with that is essentially they need to produce less content but more unique and higher quality, unless, again, they got more resources thrown at it. And that comes back to the question we started this off with, which is, are the publishers, are the people making the decisions here for this kind of stuff, are they actually prepared? Because it's just, that's the way forward, right? I mean, loot boxes are pretty much going away, I think, at this point. They're either getting banned, they're being made illegal, or, again, they're not making as much money as I think they once were, and developers and publishers are having to find new avenues for profit, for income with these many games as a service titles. So you are coming to this point where, yeah, we're going to let people buy cosmetics straight out, and those cosmetics are very much now tied to the health, to the existence of these experiences that are lasting for multiple years. I think the other side of it too is, are you prepared to have a team not just to produce paid DLC, but in-game DLC? Overwatch kind of rides this line as you can do both either way. But you look at a game like Destiny. Eververse sucked because it put things that I didn't really value that much behind a paywall, but it put some stuff behind a paywall cosmetically, right? And that's the last thing, number one, that a game like Destiny 2 needed at launch, where it was already light on the content and on the unlock and the progression side of things, the end game specifically. But it also, like, again, I just didn't see anything worth a damn there. I find it mind-boggling that Eververse survived in the form that it was in for as long as it did, because I don't know who was paying for that shit. Who was buying these engrams? They were literally valueless. The cosmetics that they were putting there were not very unique or exciting. They were pretty damn boring, and so much of this stuff could be unlocked just by getting your bright engrams. It was like, who is spending money? There's nothing worth value here. I don't find anything exciting about the Eververse. I didn't for a very long time. I will say, with Forsaken, they finally started to pump some interesting stuff in there. The Whisper of the Worm, which was one of their more interesting weapon quests, obviously Black Hand or Black Spindle carried on now, got 2 very unique ornaments that are premium purchases, but you buy them directly. You don't buy them in a random engram. You buy them in a box that comes with some shaders and some bright dust. See, that's the strategy that makes sense. That's doing it right. But again, all of these issues, I think, came from a team that didn't have the resources to produce enough of this content, because for Destiny, you got to produce on both sides of the fence. You need your in-game content. You need in-game armor. You need in-game cosmetics. You need in-game ornaments. You need all this stuff because the community demands it, because you charge them for the game's base and for its expansions. And then if you want to make additional profit, you need to have interesting premium cosmetics available at the Eververse. The game is just finally getting to that point where it feels more fair and balanced in that sense, and where there's stuff put behind a paywall that makes sense to be put behind that paywall, and that also is actually probably going to turn a profit. So that's the question, ladies and gentlemen. The food for thought for you this Monday is, are publishers prepared to produce cosmetics at the rate at which they're developing a demand for them? This is a discussion that can cover many different games. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've got any specific examples, feel free to share them down in the comment section below. And I'd like to thank you all so very much for joining me for the very first episode of The Tony Mo Show. Yeah, just going to have fun with this. This is, again, going to be the place where everything else happens. The rest of the week, more dedicated, specific discussion pieces. Still be doing, like, you know, I'm going to talk about this game that I played, but I might actually throw it into this episode as well. This might just become the show where we talk about everything, because I don't know, that just kind of works for me. And then the rest of the week we can do, like, you know, Anthem stuff. And eventually Anthem's going to become a huge part of this channel with guides and, you know, in-depth videos. So this will be perfect for keeping all of the other discussion in existence and exciting and fun while also doing Anthem coverage. I hope you guys have a great week. I'm going to be very busy this week. Hopefully get some videos out for you. But my best friend, other Tony as I refer to him often, is getting married this weekend. So I'll be tied up in that. If I don't see you, I hope you have a wonderful week. If I do see you, I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
You have been brought here for a purpose. The most important